broadcast now. Hi all, and welcome to today's webinar, Choosing the Right Fundraising Technology for Your Next Charity Event. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us here today, and I look forward to an engaging session from our speakers. Before we get started, just a quick reminder that this session is being recorded and we'll be sending the recording and slides afterwards. Also, we encourage you to continue the conversation on Twitter, so if you hear something you like, don't forget to tweet at GivergyANZ with the hashtag RaisingMore. As this is a listen-only webinar, feel free to use the chat for any questions and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the session. My name's Will and I'm very excited to introduce our panel today, John and Sandy. As mentioned, my name is Will Carrick. I'm the Business Development Manager here in Sydney. I'm joined by John Douglas, our Global Director of Business Development. Since joining Givergy in 2012, his role covers a broad variety of responsibilities spanning almost every department, managing the company's strategic planning and international expansion, most recently of which into Australia. You may recognise Sandy from Lumi, formerly IML, who is based in Melbourne and has years of experience working with charity partners. I know both are well placed to bring a global outlook on the discussion today. So we've got an action-packed itinerary for you, which shouldn't last longer than 30 to 35 minutes. We'll be covering a brief introduction into Givergy, an overview of technology, a more in-depth discussion regarding benefits of mobile versus tablet solutions, and finishing with a Q&A. So with that in mind, here's John to take us away.
Thanks very much, Will, and good afternoon, everyone. I thought I'd start with a brief background and introduction to Givergy as a whole. So if you don't know much about us or the firm, or perhaps why we're in Australia, then the next few slides should help. In essence, Givergy are a fundraising specialist, and everything we do is designed to help charities raise more money. Givergy sits at the heart of giving, and we have obviously all products to help charities raise more. Every product we have is focused around, or mainly live events, but online auctions, both silent auctions and also pledging. If you're wondering where the name comes from, or the name Givergy stands for, it's the synthesis between giving, energy, and technology. So there's actually also a short video that brings the brand to life on our website that if you're interested in, we'll send around the link afterwards. A few quick stats. We all love stats. I hope we'll bring our services to life a little bit. We started 6 years ago in the UK. We've been in Australia for a few months now. But in the last 12 months throughout the globe, we've raised in excess of 50 million Australian dollars for our charities, of which there are about 1,000 in total. And that's raised at over 1,500 events globally. Some pretty impressive figures. And with that, obviously, we have offices throughout the globe, most recent expansion into Australia and also Hong Kong, but also have a number of offices throughout the States and also in Canada, with the global headquarters being in London. Now, one of the reasons I mention us being sort of the global leader in fundraising technology is mainly because it allows us to compare fundraising practices throughout the globe. We do see a lot of differences in each territory, and I'll touch on that a little bit later on. Every event we did, of which there were 1,500 last year, range obviously and differ in size and also nature. But the average, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with this, is sort of a 350-person gala dinner with about 10 guests per table, so about 35 tables in total. Now, we also do events from 50-person golf days up to absolutely massive 1,500-person gala dinners and everything in between. So everything we talk about today, you'll obviously hear us talk about the flexibility of the products we've developed, and that's one of the reasons obviously for the topic and the decision between should we use a mobile-based platform or a tablet-based platform. Like Will mentioned at the start, if you do have any questions throughout as we're going along, be it about ourselves or the brand or the products, then feel free to send them in and we'll touch on the questions at the end. So finishing with obviously ourselves, which technology specialists, we have a range of all products to help charities raise more money. All products we have are developed in-house, and we're constantly developing to to better the products we have, and therefore to help you raise more money in different ways to perhaps we're used to at the moment. Some of you may know, and as Will mentioned, obviously Sandy joined us with a Givergy hat on, but previously to that was with IML or Lumi. Now, in March this year, Givergy actually acquired the Lumi fundraising arm of their business. It made total sense for both firms. Obviously, Lumi and IML now focusing purely on quiz, voting, and audience engagement technology, and Givergy has always been focused around charity technology and helping charities raise more. So that sort of deal made total sense. As clients that may be familiar with on the call, I know we've got a couple that have used the IML and Lumi technology before. You may be familiar with the handsets and the smart cards that IML had. Now, you still have access to that technology should you wish to pursue it, but you also now have access to the whole suite of products that Givergy bring as well. So you'll see a little bit more about that. And should you obviously want to catch up afterwards and perhaps meet and see it in person, then feel free to arrange that later. So that's a short introduction from myself, and hopefully has set the scene. And I'll now pass on to Sandy, who'll run through a few polls and talk to you a bit more about the technology.
Thank you, John. Fundraising technology started with big clunky handsets 15 years ago, and it has really evolved to online, mobile, and tablets in the last 5 years. In response to our clients' needs, we've added online payment, ticketing, and lot items to our list of products, which has really put us in the best place to service all our clients. Now, we could go on for hours talking about each of them, but in the interest of time today, we're only going to look at mobile and tablets, as these are the two products that most of our clients have a hard time deciding which would best suit their events. Now, with the next poll, I'd like to get an understanding, of how many events you organise a year. So A, 1 to 2, B, 3 to 5, C, over 5, and D, none. So we'll just open the poll. If you can just put your votes through. And we'll close it. Great. It's very interesting. It's great to see because most of our clients have very similar numbers. So there are mostly 1 to 2 major events that we do for them a year. Now,
just jumping in there, it's nice to see that everyone on the call organises a fundraising event, because if you didn't and you selected D or none, it would be slightly awkward.
Great. Now, before we look at whether we should consider a mobile or tablets, you may have been asking, why use technology at all? So what would it bring to your event? Technology raises more simply by increasing bidding activity. It makes it easy for guests to bid and keep track of their bids while seated at their table. And as a result, it increases overall bidding activity. Typically, we've seen at least a 30% increase in the amount of funds raised through technology compared to paper. For example, the Willow Foundation doubled the amount raised on their silent auction the first year they used tablets. Now, others have increased their auction revenues by 300 or even 400%. Also, technology taps into people's competitive nature. As guests start bidding on their phones or tablets, the leaderboard updates in real time with new bids and pop-up messages, creating a very competitive but also engaging experience for guests. Also, it keeps all the guests in the room, so it gives the event manager more control over the room. The larger the event is, obviously the harder it is to keep everyone's focus on the proceeds of the evening. So having your guests at their table instead of bidding on items in the foyer or at the back of the room does help you to keep the evening on track, whilst the silent auction bidding is still happening in the background. And lastly, it makes it so much easier to manage. So no more paper bid sheets to collect and tally. The system records every single bid with timestamps, sends out our bid notifications, winners receive links to online payment, and invoices are generated and printed from the system. Now, we'll just take us to the next poll. So what fundraising technology have you used in the past? A for mobiles, B for tablets or handsets if you have used the Lumi handsets, a combination of both, or none at all. So we'll just open the polls. And we'll close it now if we've received the votes through.
Will's just shared the results of that poll with us. I'm really interested to see that the majority of you, or 58% on the call, haven't used technology at all in the past. So hopefully the next chapter that we go into on the webinar will be particularly interesting in terms of mobile versus tablet. To see it's neck and neck between mobiles and tablets or handsets, obviously both on the 17% and 8% that have used a combination of the two. So a nice spread that everyone should be obviously interested in the next section. So without further ado, obviously the main crux of this conversation was about the difference and the benefits associated with both the mobile-based platform or a tablet-based platform. Now, you're probably pleased to know that this debate is not only just one that's limited to Australia, but rattles around the globe. Each territory is very different, and we've conducted this survey throughout the globe in the last few months, and actually there's different results in different territory. Not necessarily associated to mobile versus tablet, but just to give you an idea of how things do differ throughout the globe. In the US, typically when you attend a gala dinner, you are asked to pre-swipe your credit card as you arrive at the venue, so that at the end of the silent auction or the end of the pledging, they can check you out immediately for whatever funds you have spent on the night. Now, I think if we ever tried to do that in Australia, or certainly if we ever tried to do that in the UK, there'd be a few raised eyebrows in the room. Obviously, you've already spent money on the ticket to attend the event, and before you've even been served a canapé or perhaps a glass of champagne, being asked to pre-swipe your credit card so they can check you out for even more money, I don't think would be welcomed very well. But in the US, that's the norm and that's what they expect. So that gives you an idea of how things do differ. To set the scene about getting the technology right, now there's three things to keep in mind no matter what technology you do implement. The firstly being it's absolutely key to know your audience. Obviously the size of the event, but more so perhaps the type of individuals in the room and also the demographic. I know Sandy will be touching on a case study later about the Australian Museum event we recently had in Sydney, but the demographic of that event was such that it typically suited a tablet-based event. Now the other thing to note is that obviously make sure you know what products are out there. Lots of charity events happen all the time, but technology is moving on very swiftly. There's obviously a few more suppliers in Australia, as well as Givergy, and all technologies sort of develop at different paces. So whenever you're organising an event, we recommend, even if you do end up selecting Givergy, to go through a tender process to allow fair proposals, and therefore make sure you are selecting the right technology for your event, rather than perhaps using a previous supplier that you're just sort of accustomed to. And the last point is to know your venue. All venues differ. Some venues have Wi-Fi, some have black spots, some are inside, some are outside, some are large, some are small, and therefore it's particularly important to know your venue as well, because that does limit the type of technology that we recommend. And we recommend that if you get those three aspects right, your audience, obviously knowing what products are out there, and also the venue, then you will raise more money. But it's also important to note that not to overload guests with technologies or mechanisms through which they can place their bids. I think if you give them every single way of bidding, then or pledging, you'll probably get them to switch off and they'll feel slightly confused. So we don't recommend giving them everything that's available, but certainly selecting one of the options pops as a slight combination of the two, and therefore keep them focused, and therefore you will raise money. So looking at mobiles in a bit more detail, what is a mobile platform? Well, in the context of this conversation, we're talking about a mobile responsive website. The Givergy platform isn't an app. I think obviously the faff of downloading an app before an event, and some guests may forget and may find it slightly frustrating to do it on the night, means that it's just a mobile responsive website, which is very simple to use, responds to any platform, be it a smartphone, be it a tablet, or be it perhaps a laptop or a desktop at home. It runs off venue Wi-Fi or 4G connection. and can be launched in advance of the event as far as you want. So it can also be used for obviously ticketing, giving more information about sponsors, perhaps the running order of the event, the map of the venue, information about last year's event perhaps, as well as obviously displaying all the auction items, their images, descriptions, who the current highest bidder is, and obviously giving the guests the ability to pledge as well. There are three core benefits that we believe to the mobile solution. The main is that obviously everyone has their own device. Now, we all obviously have phones, typically 95% of those these days are smartphones, if not more than that, and therefore providing a mobile platform allows everyone in the room to be able to take part. And not listed on that slide, but it also allows people external to the room to take part as well, be it at their homes, be it perhaps that come to the cocktail reception and had to leave. But it isn't just limited to those that have a device in their hand that are at the venue. It can be obviously marketed to an external audience as well. The typical mobile platform we see is slightly lower cost because obviously people are using their own smartphones. We're not providing the hardware, and we're not providing a Wi-Fi network, although we can boost the existing Wi-Fi network if required. So the mobile responsive website works off 4G, like I mentioned, or the venue Wi-Fi, which means the logistics from our side are slightly less required than obviously a tablet-based platform. Obviously, all events have got budgets, and we try to stick closely to your budget as possible. So, if budget is particularly tight, then would perhaps suggest using a mobile platform rather than tablet. The other point is that obviously it's a great marketing tool for the event. Like I mentioned at the start, you can send it out to your guests in advance of them attending the event. Typically, clients or charities will get sponsors to pay for the technology because they get great sponsorship exposure throughout the site. Not only is it branded fully for your event and your charity with your own URL, with your background and designs and colour schemes, but also on that image that you can see on the slide where the Givergy logo is at the top would be your own logos, perhaps your sponsor logos as well. So it's sort of led to believe that it's your own system rather than the Givergy system. So those are sort of a few benefits. Just to move on to a case study. Now, we're typically all well versed in what the bid sheets used to look like with the clipboards that we used to walk around with at events or have in front of each auction item at the back of the room. Obviously, our technology has replaced the bid sheets, and one case study which I was planning on touching on, which is the next slide, is a recent Hong Kong event. It was one of the chambers of commerce out in Hong Kong. They'd used pen and paper at previous events and had never used technology. And this year they actually raised 150% more than they did the previous year. Now I was going to go into a little bit more detail about this event, but actually we had an event last night, again not in Australia but in Singapore, and the results from that event that was just using a purely mobile-based platform, and again had used pen and paper both in 2014 and 15, were quite staggering. Now, we had obviously everyone in the room using their mobiles, and we also had little URL business cards that we handed out to guests that hadn't looked at the website before they arrived on site, and we also had a technician present on the night to make any changes that were needed, and add any last-minute lot items in, etc. And the feedback was absolutely staggering. They raised more last night than they did both in 2014 and 2015 combined. And the number of bids that were seen in terms of only 350 people being in the room was a ratio of about 3 to 1. So over 900 bids were placed, which is quite a remarkable ratio. The feedback from the technician that was there was that he's never seen the leaderboard so active. So obviously guests are placing bids on their phones during the gala, and on the screens around the room we have our leaderboard screens. And as you place a bid, you have a pop-up message that shows on the leaderboard showing that obviously a new bid has been received and who the highest bidder is. And he said that it was just constantly throughout the night popping up and showing obviously the bids are being received. And the MC at one point could hardly keep up with the action because there was so much going on and the system was taking care of itself. So that was great to see. And the feedback from both the Hong Kong event and the event last night was very similar in the fact that the system was extremely seamless. Obviously external bidders could take part as well, which they really enjoyed, which they hadn't been able to in previous years with pen and paper. Despite the first event obviously being a roaming event, which was a cocktail reception, with the Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, last night being a sit-down gala. It was both nice for individuals to be able to use their phones no matter where they were in the venue, be it at the bar, be it looking at the auction items outside in the foyer, or perhaps if they'd left early, still be able to take part in the auction. And the one point that really hit home about both events was how unobtrusive they felt the technology was. So obviously these events are typically very busy, there's lots going on, but the system does take care of itself and obviously keeps the competitive nature which pen and paper doesn't really bring. So obviously guests receive outbid text messages when they've been outbid. That obviously replaces the need for an auctioneer to constantly make announcements, but also adds to the atmosphere in the room. However, that said, mobiles aren't right for every event, and obviously, as we'll see in Sandy's next case study, where tablets actually worked better than the mobile platform they'd used by another local Sydney supplier in the previous year. So without further ado, I'll pass you on to Sandy to talk more in detail about tablets.
Thank you. So when we talk about tablets, the Givergy tablets are 7-inch color screen with a long battery life, lightweight, easy to hold in one hand, and maybe a glass of wine in the other. So the benefits of the tablets that we believe are the three main ones: bespoke, flexible app, highly intuitive, easy to use, that suits all demographics and can be fully branded for the charity and sponsors. Secondly, there's no distraction, so it keeps guests focused on the event. Since all the tablets can be used for is bidding and pledging, guests can't exit the app and browse or access social media sites. And thirdly, local reliable Wi-Fi network. The tablets connect to a local Wi-Fi network that we set up on site to ensure reliability and speed. So we don't rely on any venue Wi-Fi or 3G, 4G coverage. And also, there is no low battery issue. So the tablets have a long battery life that lasts the duration of an event. So next we'll look at a short case study. As John mentioned, the Australian Museum, who decided to switch to using tablets for their recent event a couple of weeks ago. Last year, they used a local mobile fundraiser provider, which didn't work for them due to demographics of their audience and also the restraint from using mobile phones at the table. So this year, they decided that a dedicated bidding device would work better for them. The tablets were completely branded to be on point with the theming, and they kept it simple with just 2 buttons on the tablets, one for silent auction and the other for pledges. The tablet solution was a great fit for their event because, one, it's very intuitive. Guests didn't need instructions. 2, the guests were pre-registered, which made it simple and easy to log in and bid. And the third one is it kept everyone focused on the evening, which was really important for them. Now on the large screen that you can see is the leaderboard used at the event, completely branded. It shows the item name, highest bid amount, and highest bidder's name with a picture of the item on the right. Now when we do receive a new bid, there will be a pop-up messages that will come on top of that. And next to it, the app on the tablet is customized to match the theme, and the large pictures on the tablet actually gives the item and donors alike great exposure. That takes us to our last poll. So knowing what you know now about mobile and tablets, what method would you most likely use in the future? So A for mobiles, B for tablets or handsets, C a combination, and D none.
Okay, we'll just close the voting now and share with you the results. And obviously it's split equally across mobile, tablets, handsets, and also a combination of the three, which is really interesting. It's nice to know that all those that haven't used fundraising technology in the past, that mentioned that in the second poll, have now been sort of enlightened into fundraising technology and feel that they would be comfortable using one or the other, or perhaps a combination. And therefore it leads me on to one of the final slides, which is sort of our suggestion. We obviously talked a lot about the different products that we have and both solutions, and actually there is a solution that we feel best for all events now, and it's actually making the most of both products. So launching a pre-events online auction website, which can be used obviously for the auction items, perhaps for allowing people to place pledges beforehand, and displaying information about the event and sponsors, as I mentioned. So running that perhaps 2 weeks in advance of the event, which allows your whole database as well as the guests on the night to take part. And then closing that either the day before the event or the morning of the event, which allows those guests that aren't coming on the night to place their maximum bids. So they, if they really want an auction item, they can actually place their maximum bid, and the system will take care of the bidding on the night for them, as they're not present in the room. But it also, more importantly, gives the privilege of those that are in the room that have bought a ticket to be part of the auction and win the great auction items that are available on the night. Now, closing the website on the day before the event and actually just having tablets present on the night. And the reason for that is that I personally feel the benefits that Sandy mentioned about the tablets perhaps outweigh the benefits of mobile. They are so simple to use. It is a very flexible back-end system and very flexible front-end system for the guest to use, and it is so simple. Knowing your demographic, obviously the tablets are simple for everyone to use, not just perhaps the tech-savvy ones amongst us. As a client, you obviously still get access to the back end of the system. You can still take payment. You can still use outbid SMS messages should you want to with the tablets. That's not just limited to a mobile platform. But I do think that keeping people focused on the night and using the tablets as a really simple form will raise you more money. Now, each event is obviously very different, so if you take one thing away from this webinar is the fact that we do have both solutions and we do have a whole host of other products to help you raise more money. We're more than happy to share with you obviously case studies or any testimonials if you want to speak to clients that have perhaps used both in the past, so feel free to follow up with us, and we're on hand to help you as best we can.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for a great session. Now we do still have a few minutes left for a quick Q&A. If you do have any more questions, we have had a couple come in, but if you have any more, simply type your questions into the chat and we'll do our best to get them answered. So, over to the questions. Sandy, you're up. What happens if my venue doesn't have Wi-Fi?
Well, if your venue doesn't have Wi-Fi, obviously the tablet would be the best solution suited for your event. It's very similar. We do have an event in a venue in Melbourne, which is a Plaza Ballroom with very low 3G, 4G coverage. So in this case, we recommend using the tablets where there won't be any issue with connectivity.
Very good. John, do you see any difference in what raises more?
Tricky question. I tend to believe, and I think the stats will back it up, that we still to this day use tablets at between 75 and 80% of the events, those 1,500 events that we support. What we don't have is probably enough data in the last 2 years to compare directly a mobile event versus a tablet event. It's very, very hard to get a client to put on exactly the same event, exactly the same year after year, and use one single product. So it's probably too hard to say exactly which product raises more, but it's fair to say that tablets are used more frequently. However, mobiles are gaining, and with obviously smartphones developing as they are, and responsive sites being sort of the norm now, guests using a combination of the two is what we're seeing day in, day out.
Okay, and John, just staying with you, we have a question from the same user. Are there any negatives to both products?
Good question again. Obviously someone not feeling quite as positive as perhaps us in the room today, focusing just on the benefits, but a good question nonetheless. Now, the easiest way to answer that, I suppose, is that the negatives for each product are the contra to what the benefits were for the opposing product. So, for example, a negative of the tablets is that every guest in the room has a tablet themselves. So if you've got a 400-person gala dinner, it would probably blow the budget out the water, giving every single person in the room a tablet for themselves, which we don't think would equate to a huge amount more money raised than just perhaps having 2 or 3 tablets on each table of 10 guests. Likewise, you know, a negative of the mobile solution would be that you are reliant on venue Wi-Fi or 3 or 4G. So obviously the tablets have their own Wi-Fi network that's safe and secure, and therefore, you know, the easiest way to look at it is the contra to the benefits of the opposing product. But it's also, you know, very interesting to, you know, to think about the negatives of each one. Like I said at the start, you know, you must know what products are out there, both pros and cons for each one, before you make an informed decision of which one you want to focus on.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks for that. And another question coming in here. Do you offer event registration or ticketing?
Great, yeah, we do certainly offer both products. Our mobile websites do have a ticketing functionality on there, and we do actually have a demo of that mobile product which we can share with you after the call. There is a demo product which shows you how you can set ticketing up in terms of perhaps buy 1 ticket, perhaps buy 5, perhaps buy a table of 10, or a VIP ticket. So we do ticketing, absolutely. So you can use the pre-event website for ticketing as well. It just doesn't have to be launched 2 weeks in advance when obviously all tickets are sold. It can be used months in advance for the whole event. And check-in, we certainly do have a registration product, which is also linked into the guest list in the back end of the system, so that if your guests wanted to arrive and you're typically crossing them off a checklist or pen and paper clipboard at the moment, you can certainly use a tablet to do that, and it's very simple to use. And yeah, we can certainly share more information with that after the call.
Okay, right. How about, is this a one-off cost per event, or once you've purchased the software, can you use it multiple times?
It is a cost per event. However, in the case where some clients have multiple events, you know, in a year with us, we're more than happy to come to and offer a pricing structure that would suit their budget and, you know, their events. So it would be great to hear more about your event and discuss, you know, how we can work together.
All right, great. So another question here. Can you do events all over Australia?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in the case of mobiles, obviously, you know, we can have that ready way beforehand and send the one-person support on site on the day of your event. And obviously with tablets as well, they're easy and light to travel with. So we do events in Perth, Darwin, all over Australia.
Yeah, we've actually got 2 events on tonight, both one in Adelaide and one down in Melbourne. Mm-hmm. So there are teams travelling all over Australia as we speak to support those events. So we're certainly not just limited to Sydney or Melbourne. We have done events all over us.
Yeah. Okay,
and when you're providing staff for these events, do you need site staff for both solutions?
We do. We can do a number of things. We can either provide you the mobile system and you run with it yourself, but we tend to prefer to provide a service alongside the technology, and I think that really helps, especially if it's the first time you've used the technology, which it probably is for those that are on the call that mentioned they've never used technology before. So with the mobile system, we typically provide a technician, like Sandy mentioned, who's there to help you out and change things on the night, add in lot items last minute, retract bids if someone puts too many zeros on the end of their bid, and assist you in any way possible. We can certainly provide more staff if you wish, but certainly just one technician is normally sufficient for the mobile product. In terms of the tablet solution, we typically provide a minimum of 3 staff. So again, 1 technician to obviously help set up the Wi-Fi network and to be there and again obviously man the back end of the system, but also 2 members of staff that are there front of house to help your guests and help you as a client to update you and perhaps your auctioneer with how much has been raised so far. And again, ensure that everyone finds it as simple and easy to use as the tablets are.
Okay, great. And just time for one more question. What's the setup time and how long before the event do we need to confirm?
We could do an event tomorrow if we needed to. So we would prefer to work, very well in advance, 3 months before the event. But essentially, we can get set up really quickly and have a turnaround time of 24 hours. So that's not a problem at all.
Yeah, the information that we do need from clients is pretty straightforward, and we provide you with templates to complete before the event. But it's information such as the descriptions of the lot items, the images, the starting bids, the titles, all the information you probably have already, but just sent through to us in a template or uploaded automatically yourselves into the back end of the system. And then we obviously also need your branding, your logos, your sponsor logos, and other information about the charity, so we can set the system up so it looks like your own. Like Sandy said, we have done events on a 24-hour turnaround time before, and we're happy to help out wherever we can. But we're certainly, ideally, in an ideal world, would like at least two weeks to a month, if not 3 months, to set the system up and make sure you're happy with it, present to any committee members, and tweak anything as needed, so you're totally happy with how the system works and looks.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you all for taking the time out of your day to be here. For any questions we couldn't answer, we will do so in a follow-up to this session. And as a reminder, the slides and recording will be mailed out shortly. We look forward to having you at our next virtual event. Have a great day, weekend, and best of luck with your next event.
Thanks
so much. Bye-bye.